Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena for yet more DIY fun. Last week, after an eternity spent fairing and sanding, I was finally able to start applying primer in the head. This week I've already applied the first coat of paint. Things are looking mighty white in here, but unfortunately I kinda goofed that first coat. As you can see right here, I've got a couple of runs. The paint I'm using, which is this stuff called undercoat, is pretty slow to cure. So those runs are still soft, and at the current temperature, the time until sandable according to the TDS is around 30 hours. And the minimum overcoating interval is 16 hours. I'm afraid if I try to remove those runs while they're still soft, I'm just gonna cause more of an issue. So yeah, I'm kinda stuck waiting for those to be sandable. Today is Tuesday, so that means sanding and second coat Wednesday, third coat Thursday. Hopefully I won't need a fourth coat, that would be Friday. Even if I only need the 3 coats, I won't be able to start installing stuff in the head until Saturday. So this week, let's not focus so much on what's going on in the head, because it's gonna be a while until I can continue actually doing stuff in there besides just painting. And how much video can you really shoot about just applying paint? So yeah, this week, let's focus mainly on some other stuff. Like for instance, I want to finish assembling the freezer area in the forward cabin. I've got some itty bitty Perkins DIY genset stuff up at the workshop. And yeah, we've got some other stuff lined up, so let's focus on that instead. Let's start up here at the workshop with the DIY diesel genset. Last week I soaked the freshwater side of the cooling system in some vinegar to clean it. I flushed it once yesterday, and this is the gunk that came out, so clearly that vinegar had some kind of effect. I'd like to just flush it a couple more times just to make absolutely sure I've gotten all of the gunk and vinegar out of there. After having removed the vinegar from the cooling system, this is some of the water I used for flushing it, and as you can see, that's also pretty nasty. This is definitely gonna be a little bit messy, but you know what they say, you gotta break a few polar bears to make an omelet. I'll pour some tap water through here, then we'll close it back up, run it for a little bit, empty that out, and repeat that process a couple of times. Bear in mind, when we crank the engine, it's going to be extremely loud. There is no muffler on here, there's no air filter, and we're right next to it, so it's going to be loud. We've got some nice clean water for the saltwater side. I'm not going to be running the engine for long, but still. Let's connect the fuel pump. Like I said, a little bit loud. Look at that! Absolutely no wobble. Whew! I ran the engine just for a little bit, just to make sure that the water got nice and warm. Definitely still on the yucky side, so let's repeat this a couple of times. This is looking almost tap water-ish, at least in some parts of the world. We'll switch to distilled water and do one final flush. Yesterday I did a quick little load test with Martin. That's why there are 3 space heaters here. I don't have any video of that, but I can reproduce it. Each of these little space heaters here are 2000 watts. All 3 are connected to Mr. Alternator. If I turn on 1, we've got a 2 kilowatt load. If I turn on 2, we've got a 4 kilowatt load. And if I turn on 3, we've got a 6 kilowatt load. But spoiler alert, the itty bitty Perkins is not going to be able to handle 6 kilowatts. Back here we've got a little clampy ampy meter, so we can see how many amps we're drawing. But yeah, I'm probably going to narrate over this because it's going to be loud in here, as you've heard. After cranking the engine, you can see that there is 0 load on the alternator. Let's switch on the first of the space heaters, and bam! We're drawing 8.5 amps at 240 volts. Let's bump that up to 2 space heaters. Now we're drawing 17.2 amps. The engine at this point sounds fine. That is right up until we turn the 3rd space heater on. The engine sounds like it's not really having fun, and the exhaust is a little bit black. We're now drawing almost 21 amps. As you saw, with the pedal to the metal, we were drawing 21 amps. That is 21 amps at 240 volts, so that's something like 5 kilowatts. But I don't want to torture the itty bitty Perkins. I like it. I don't want to hurt it. So we'll probably load it somewhere at around 4 kilowatts instead. That seems to be much better for it. Sure, you can buy a marine genset off the shelf that's more compact and lighter than this, but you're going to be paying through the nose. This, all in all, is around $3,000. If I was to buy something equivalent of this off the shelf, it would probably be around 3 times that. Another big advantage to the itty-bitty Perkins is if something breaks, well, I'm already very well familiar with it, so it should be pretty straightforward for me to fix. Spare parts are going to be easy to get almost anywhere because this is all very standard stuff. And yeah, I could have bought something that was smaller, a little bit lighter, for a lot more money, but I like the itty-bitty Perkins. In terms of the sound level of this, once the muffler's on there and the air filter's on there, it's going to be a lot more quiet. It's going to be very comparable to a lot of the off-the-shelf marine gensets. So the only thing we don't really have that's as convenient as the off-the-shelf models is a little bit of automation. Like for instance, it would be nice not to have to poke the starter with my finger every time we want to run the genset. It would be nice to be able to do that from, for instance, the chart table, and it would also be nice to be able to get some kind of warning if, say, there's a coolant issue or an oil pressure issue, something like that. I'm a software developer by trade. Now, I haven't done a lot of PLC stuff, but Martin has, and in fact, he has a program he's written for their genset, which is going to work almost out of the box for my genset. So I'm hoping he can give me a copy of that and help me get that up and running. That would be really cool. But yeah, this guy is something that would be cool to have for that. This is a little temperature sensor that I'm going to mount here on the side of the exhaust. If there is a problem with the raw water cooling, then the temperature in this part of the exhaust is going to rise rapidly, and this thing is going to warn me. Well, that's to say, this thing will do absolutely nothing but tell me the temperature. But dependent on that temperature, if we see it go above a set limit, we can auto shut down the genset to prevent any damage. We can also pop up a little alert or a warning on a screen. We can do a bunch of cool stuff. Once we're done fiddling with this, it'll have more features than an off-the-shelf genset. Right now, I've got this temperature sensor for the exhaust, and I've got this pressure transmitter for the oil pressure. We also have this little temperature doohickey that's mounted up here. And next week, a little RPM sensor for the flywheel housing should show up, so we actually know if the genset is running or not. So there's a lot of stuff we can play around with here, which I think is going to be very cool. That's probably going to be a project for next winter in Scotland, because right now it's just about getting the thing up and running so we can use it. But yeah, maybe we'll get back to the controller for this a little bit later in this video or in next week's video. I got very excited Sunday morning when I got a text from my stainless guy saying that Athena's new water tank was ready to be picked up. But the excitement was kind of short-lived. About 2 months ago, we started designing this tank. I sent him some rough measurements. He sent me a revision 1 of the design. I made some modifications to that. He sent me a revision 2. I approved that design and he set to work. But when I went to put in the tank level sender, it turns out this is not revision 2 of the tank. It's revision 1. So for instance, revision 2 is 8 centimeters higher, which means it can hold a lot more water, which is very important because this is going to be our only tank to start out with. We might have a second tank made in Scotland, but there's no time for that now. So this is going to be our only tank. So it's kind of important that we get the full available volume. And also, revision 1 of the tank didn't have a way of actually getting water out of the tank. So there is no pickup on any of these connections here on the back of the tank. It's an honest mistake, although it is a little bit frustrating, but I talked to the stainless guy and he said he would see if he had time to build us a new tank, a correct revision number 2 tank. But yeah, I really hope he does, because like I said, we need to carry all the water we can squeeze in because we don't have a water maker yet. Even though we don't have a water tank yet, at some point we will, and it would be nice to be able to shower. I picked up this completely standard household mixer for a shower. There is only one problem, and that is mounting the thing. I have searched high and low, but I have not been able to find anything that'll allow me to attach this to a piece of plywood. So, well, I kind of have to make something myself. I've ordered some different washers that I figured I could weld onto these. The only ones I could get with a big enough hole on the inside here have a smaller outside diameter. So what I'd really like to is just to enlarge this hole a little bit. To Mr. Lathe. With just one liberal application of hole expander, we should be able to take this hole from 19 millimeters to roughly 27 millimeters. like a frickin' glove. They're probably not the prettiest thing in the world, but 3 holes in each, and I should be able to through bolt them through the plywood that's covering the poop tank, and then that will hold the mixer. I did try to see if I could find something like this I could just buy, but all I could find would involve me having to build some kind of weird box on the inside of the poop tank hider. So yeah, this was the best solution I could come up with. Over the next couple of days, I laid up glass on the front of the poop tank cover in preparation of installing the shower mixer and some hatches. I also managed to get the last 2 coats of paint applied. That means I should be able to start plumbing in the head this weekend. Up on deck, I finished the installation of the liferaft I started in last week's video. I used a wrench and a long stick to hold the bolts stationary while turning the nuts. It was very straightforward, and Athena now has a brand new top-of-the-line Viking Rescue Pro life raft. I also installed these little blocks on the stanchions. These are for the furling line, for the furling head sail, and for the staysail sheet. Earlier today, I got started building a little junction/relay box that is going to be essential in automating the itty-bitty Perkins genset. This is what that box looks like now. It's got 4 relays in here and a couple of switches. This switch over here on the side will enable and disable remote start. So say I'm working on the generator, I can lock it out so that nobody can start it from anywhere else in the boat, just a safety feature. This one over here will allow us to start the genset and also turn it off from right inside of the technical compartment. This relay is going to control the glow plugs. This one will turn on the fuel pump. This one will engage the starter, and this one will turn off the genset. The relays and the 2 switches and all of the sensors on the engine are going to get connected to this controller. This is a very ruggedized, dependable piece of hardware that's going to allow us to do some programming to control everything. And there's also going to be a little display connected where we can put out any kind of error codes or any kind of information like engine hours, stuff like that. The controller and the display is a part of a product line from Danfoss called +1, and I've never worked with that before, so I don't have a ton of knowledge about programming these, but Martin does, so hopefully he'll have time to help me learn a little bit about this in the next coming weeks. In other exciting news, this showed up today. The packaging does leave a little bit to be desired, but this is Athena's new dinghy. There's a good reason for the somewhat lackluster packaging here, and that's because this was a display model. She is quite the beaut, a Zodiac Cadet 270 aluminum rib. I think this will be an awesome dinghy for Athena. Not too big, not too small. We're definitely not going to be setting any speed records with the trusty old 4 horsepower gasoline powered sewing machine here. This little guy seems to be in perfect working order, and we've got a lot of other stuff to spend money on, so yeah, this guy will do just fine. Once Ava gets here, we'll have to figure out how to best store this guy up on deck when we're on passage, but for now I'm just gonna cover him back up. If you guys have watched the last couple of videos, you'll know that I've been waiting for some tracks for a sliding solar panel setup, and well, these are those tracks. I am so excited and very relieved that those tracks showed up, because that means we should be able to fit all these 4 giant solar panels on Athena's solar arch for a combined capacity of 1,220 watts. That is a ton of solar for a 38-foot boat. The next morning, the paint was finally fully cured, so I decided to hurry up and reinstall the portlights before it started raining. I removed the old butyl tape with a bit of paint stripper. Cleanup is the easy part here. Applying the new butyl tape and getting the portlights installed was a fiddly business that ended up taking 5 hours. But at least it's done, and they should remain leak-free for many, many years. With the portlights reinstalled and also the first piece of trim in place, although that's just held in place by a friction fit right now, the head is starting to look pretty dang spiffy. I've already got some stainless steel angle iron ready to secure the poop tank cover. Just need to get it bolted in place. Already drilled some oversized holes here and filled those with thickened epoxy, so hopefully it'll be a straightforward matter of just drilling those holes and bolting this in place. The way this is supposed to work is that the poop tank cover here will slide up under the lip of the shelf here and then get bolted in place. By bolting the cover to that angle iron, it's going to be removable, but of course we're going to have to seal it, so it's not going to be easy to remove. So I'm putting in some little hatches for us to access the top of the tank and also the seacock. In case we ever need to remove the holding tank, it's going to be really nice that this cover is removable. I think I want to put the hatch to access the top of the tank here and then have the mixer below that hatch. I think that will work. Of course, this is not painted yet, so it's not going to look as good, but let's just get an idea of what this is going to look like. Yeah, I think that's going to be awesome. This is at a good level. We've got good access to the top of the tank and also to the seacock down there. There are still a few unknowns in the shower area. For instance, the position of the shower head. Maybe up there will work well, or over there. I think we're just going to have to play around with it a little bit. But yeah, the plan is to add mahogany trim to these edges here, just to protect the plywood. It is covered by fiberglass, but in case we bump it, I don't want to get any water ingress into that plywood. Also, we need some kind of cabinet doors there, drawer fronts, a new countertop for the vanity, and some kind of flooring. I might be gold plating a tiny bit now, but perhaps, maybe it would be nice with some kind of door too. Now, I think I've got everything I need to do all of that, except for the new countertop for the vanity, but that's okay because that's going to get cut out of the same piece of countertop material as the new countertop for the kitchen island. Earlier today I went through all of my storage and found all of the little boxes that came with Athena's new head. That should be everything I need to get the head up and running. Plus, of course, the head itself. Now, when I put this in place to do a little test fit, I found out that I'd completely forgotten about this little angled piece up here. So there's a gap near the top. The rest of it is a good fit. But I need to come up with some kind of wedge to put in there. I'd like to have all of the plumbing of the head be in one separate video, so I'm gonna save all of that for next week. In here in the forward cabin, you can see my little storage area for upcoming project doohickeys. This is the pump we'll use to get the water out of the shower and also out of the vanity sink. And those are gonna get connected to this little doohickey here. This little manifold has a sensor built in that'll start the pump as soon as it sees water. So this is an alternative to a shower sump. Installing the pump and the little manifold is also on the to-do list for next week. I'm not sure I'll be able to get it up and running because that requires a through hole above the waterline, and yeah, I think it's best to hold off on doing that until Ava is here so she can help me on the outside of the boat. But yeah, this thing is also on the to-do list for next week. I've ordered a seal I hope I can use, and if that's the case, well then it's just a matter of installing the latches and this will be done. As you can see, there is plenty of exciting stuff coming up next week, so I hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next Sunday for yet more DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!